Hello. Probably won't be doing VOD review. Well, I mean, we probably will be doing some VOD reviews today, guys. Because we'll look at some lane swaps, but I need to make this video about the LCS viewership. So I figured I'd just do it live, and then we can take some questions if you guys have it at the end. So I will be doing a little intro that's not going to make a lot of sense for the LCS viewership, because we have to crush any kind of bullshit that Riot is going to try and use to make the viewership look good. Are we going to continue top versus JDG? Maybe tomorrow. Unfortunately, this lane swap stuff blew up on social media. Not like I didn't instigate it, but you know. So we got to take a look at some of that stuff, and I'll explain it to you guys as to why I think it is either extremely suspicious or extremely stupid of BDS to do what they did. Would you consider reviewing the finals of LCK Academy? I would. That seems like a good idea. I do have positive things to say about the LCS, guys. I do. I mean, I think the product was much better. I do. He was very proud, satisfied with his level. He played terribly. Honey Mustard, thank you for your Twitch Prime sub. So, yeah, we're just gonna do this live. I have all of my tabs open. To discuss the viewership. I may have to do something real quick, guys. Uh-oh. Hold on a second. Let me reboot the stream. On Twitch, not on YouTube. YouTube's cool. All right. Should we be back? Okay, guys. So I'm just gonna one shot this video that I need to record on stream. And hopefully I won't fuck up the intro and do it like 10 times. Don't even need to refresh the dream. Okie dokie. So, I'm not gonna respond to Twitch chat for a little bit, guys, until I'm done with this. So I'll do some questions at the end. Is it a San Pellegrino? Yes, it's a blood orange and black raspberry seltzer. It's very delicious. So if you have any questions up front, I will give you a moment to ask them now. This is going to be discussing the LCS viewership and kind of analyzing what it means for the LCS. Thoughts on Thanatos Rimmer? I haven't seen enough of Thanatos' play, but I don't see how it solves any problems. This is their shot calling is garbage. Discuss Adam being a little girl. Guys, something else, man. You know, I look forward to him continuing to downgrade himself onto worse and worse teams over the course of his career while getting benched in the playoffs because he's a little shit. What a good run he's having. Are you finishing up the top versus JDG? Probably tomorrow. Is it worse than last year? We'll be getting into that. What did he do? Do you mean what did he do this time? Because he's always doing something. He's always doing something. Adam being benched again? Maybe. He managed to get a bunch of French teenagers who have anime or soccer player profile pictures to talk shit in French to me, which I can read because I can read French. Have you seen the MSI patch preview? I have. I'll be interested to see what they do with the Zir. The Void Grubs buff is very interesting to me. Why would he talk about it? I didn't criticize him. I said that I think there are scrim leaks that allowed, that tipped off BDS in game number 1. Why is it always the ones with hentai or furry stuff in their Twitter? Because those people don't go outside and just sit on social media and talk shit about other people so that they can feel good about their garbage lives. That's why. It's very simple. They're just sad people. Are scrim leaks normal? Yes. Okay. I watch LEC since the weird format changes. Yeah, the format's better for LEC. All right, guys, let us get into this video. Boston messengers love watching your breakdowns of League and enjoy the pods and mods. Thank you. I love Boston, actually. It's a great city. What do you think would be the best way to counter lane swaps at the moment as you see them currently played? The way that it was always done? Because you inherently have a disadvantage via tower fortification from being... you know, from the tower fortification being there. What do you think of Cagel's reaction being shown in Fnatic versus Vitality game instead of their coach? I don't know. I haven't seen those games. I'm probably not going to watch them if I'm being honest. Mord ult can't be QSS. That is a huge change. I am very intrigued about that. I'm not sure I like that change. Does it also mean you can't like Olaf ult Mord? You enjoy Dom's videos of the game. Maybe I'll watch that. No, you can't cleanse Mord ult. You could only QSS it. All right, guys. It's time to do the dig in. So this is gonna look a little weird because I'm gonna have to do an intro. But you guys can suck it up. And pretend you're watching a YouTube video. And if you're on YouTube, just ignore this. And maybe I'll have to do the intro. Hopefully I won't fuck it up. Hello, everybody. This is MonteCristo, and today we're going to be taking a look at the LCS viewership for spring 2024 and how it compares to previous years of LCS and probably some sneaky tactics that Riot is going to be using to massage these numbers to probably sound better than they really are, and what this means for the league. Of course, remember to like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much. Let me start out with some things that I really did like from this season of LCS. Even though I rarely watch the games live and I watch VODs, I think that the idea of pre-recording drafts to accelerate or I should say decrease accelerate the speed of the broadcast / decrease the time in between games was a very good idea. Across all of esports, it is just a truism that the longer you're away from gameplay, when gameplay is not on the screen, you just bleed viewers no matter how good your in-between game content is. And really the battle you're fighting with analyst desks or with shoulder content is to lose the fewest number of viewers, not in fact to retain or add viewership, concurrent viewers to your broadcast, because that's just when people tune out. So by having less downtime, you probably actually increase your average concurrent viewers, which is a stat that we did see. So credit to Mark Z there. I also liked a lot of the aesthetic and tonal changes to the broadcast. I thought it was much more fun, much more dynamic. And even though LCS couldn't actually control this, we ended up with a much more entertaining split competitively. Perhaps the decrease by 2 teams made it so there were fewer a smaller pool of potential players that could be in the league, which led to more competition to fill those slots, so an average level of quality. I also think, and Dom has brought this up many times, that the point of salaries actually going down on average made sure that we didn't get a bunch of washed up former pros in the league, and instead we had the opportunity to see players who really, really actually wanted to compete in North America, particularly on some of the lower tier teams. We got a bunch of imports, but they ended up being pretty darn good for the most part. So the league was very entertaining from a competitive standpoint, even though I would say the level of play wasn't any higher than we've typically come to expect from the LCS over the years. But there is that element of, simply the games being more fun to watch. Now, again, that's not in the control of the actual, tournament organizer, but it's something that, we have access to as an audience. All right, now I'm going to have to edit this out because we got alerts. Oh, man. Well, thank you very much for the 10 gift subs, but having that 10 times in a row, it was a good troll, guys. It's okay, though. Thank you very much. Suffering from success. Oh, it's all right, Wonderstrang. Thank you very much. It's very generous of you. So yeah, as we get back into it, basically, I think Mark Z has done good work on the product side of LCS, and the product was competitively better for reasons outside of Riot's control. These are all very positive factors, and I think the smaller league has made it more compelling, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's done better things for viewership, and we really have to dig in to a lot of what Riot has said in the past, what the viewership has been in the past, and what this means for possible sponsorships and the future of LCS as a league, because it is, I hate to say it, kind of in a death spiral right now, and it has been for a number of years, and a slight increase this year is probably not as good of a thing as you think it is, because it matters who and where the increase is coming from, which is not going to say very good things. So let's take a look at some of the changes that were made this split. Now, crucially, there were 2 major co-streamers that were added, and I'm looking at ES charts right now. This is kind of the gold standard. This is a partner of many of the broadcasters around the world and tournament organizers. For example, when I ran Flashpoint, we used to work with ES charts just to get metrics and data. for our events, and they do write analysis pieces, and this is talking about the LCS Spring 2024 weeks 1 through 4, and they mention Cadril and Baiano. Now, Cadril, you probably all know if you're an English-speaking fan of League of Legends at this point in time. He's a major co-streamer, and Baiano, who is a major Portuguese, Brazilian co-streamer. Now, neither of these guys was given co-streaming rights last year, right? So a little bit strange that suddenly they're very valuable. But it turns out that most of the boosts that we saw in LCS was actually due to co-streamers. And that is not going to be good when it comes to potentially the actual audience numbers and the demographics that we're going to talk about here. And what is really important to the LCS, and what's important is North American viewers to their sponsors. And it's not really going to be a bunch of random Brazilians and Europeans who are coming into the stream. As you can see here, they do talk a little bit about comparisons. You can look this up on ES Charts as well, these articles. And so we do have a slight increase after 4 weeks to the average concurrent viewership, which is good on its face, but again, not as good when you really dig into it. Now we're going to look at the total viewership. So as we can see, here's LCS Spring 2024. We are going to see peak viewership of 246,000, average viewership at 120,000, hours watched at 10.7 million, and airtime at 89 hours. Now, the most important metrics for tournament operators and for sponsors, number one is probably hours watched, because that just simply shows if you have a logo on the stream, how many hours are going to be watched with your logo on there. And secondly is probably average concurrent viewers. Peak viewers is not actually that important, guys. Average viewership is a little bit more important, and it's pretty close as to which is more important depending on what the sponsor's looking for between hours watched and average viewership. So as we can see here, it's 120,000 average viewers and 10.7 million hours watched. Now, the hours watched are obviously going to be going down this split because they only had 8 teams instead of 10. So they had fewer matches, both in the regular season and in playoffs, because it was 6 teams in playoffs instead of 8 teams in playoffs. So you didn't have as much of a robust bracket. So those are things that are going to affect the total number of hours watched, even if the average viewership goes up slightly. Now we can compare this immediately to the previous year. LCS Spring 2023. Now here we see a decrease between 2024 and 2023. So they had 271 compared to 246,000 in peak viewership. But again, peak viewership, in my mind, not as important. We saw it jump from 109,000 average viewers to 120. So that's a good thing. Hours watched was about 4 million less in spring this year compared to spring last year. But again, airtime was significantly less, 89 hours compared to 134 hours. Again, this is because we saw fewer matches being played. Also could have been average game time was longer. I'm not going to look into that right now. That's kind of irrelevant. Crucially, though, what we're going to see is average viewers on the main channel is 63,000 and 130,000 on the Twitch channel, whereas here it's 44,000 average viewers and 75,000. So where did these viewers go? The answer is they either went to YouTube or they went to co-streams. And we're going to see a bigger split in the language. So we only have language by peak viewers, but the peak viewership was in spring. They had 24,000 Spanish viewers, almost 250,000 English viewers, whereas the peak viewership of English was 208 compared to 78,000. So a lot of Portuguese Spanish went way down. I don't know. I think they got rid of the official Spanish broadcast. I don't remember the exact reason why this would have gone down. But the point is that we have more non-English stream watchers effectively in terms of peak viewership. So the question is, what are the other changes that happened? Now, remember, in spring 2023, this was the first split that LCS actually switched days to weekdays because Riot promised us that the data said that it would be an increase in viewership. Now, that was just a lie, and it was completely fucking untrue because the thing that it did was that it also killed the LEC's ability to raid LCS. So what this means is that they transfer their Twitch viewership from LEC to LCS. Now, a lot of these people are not actively watching the show. They are literally like AFK with the stream on. And so when they get swapped over, we're not talking about an active viewer who is being swapped over. Also, now we can't know whether it was the LEC raids or perhaps the fact that it was in a kind of a pretty bad time slot for the US West Coast and kind of the US in general and on weekdays, which a lot of people complained about. Whether that was a pretty significant decline in viewership. But if there is a theory here, guys, that weekends, if Riot rediscovered that the weekends are better for viewership, then why is the average viewership only increasing 10,000 viewers concurrence by switching back to the better time slot where you're going to get raids from LEC. Raids of tens of thousands of concurrent viewers, by the way, because LCS was then kind of over the course of this split, they kept changing LCS start times so that they would be starting when LEC was over, because whenever there was overlap, LCS would have no viewership. So they kept tweaking the LCS start times like by 30 minutes here and there in order to not be concurrent with LEC, and so they could just LEC raid immediately into this. There's also factors such as CBLOL would happen before LCS, which is the Brazilian league, and Baiano would be co-streaming that, and then he would switch to LCS, and he would have like 65,000 viewers, 60,000 concurrents, and then 30,000 of those viewers would drop immediately, so that he would like have his viewership from going from CBLOL to LCS, but those viewers were still counted even though they like all clicked off. And we see this right here. There is analysis on this. For example, the matches of week 1 were covered by the popular Brazilian streamer Baiano, who has now become an interregional community caster. Baiano primarily broadcasted matches from the domestic CBLOL league, and as they ended, he switched to LCS games, and the majority of his viewers were not particularly interested in LCS. Okay? Watching North American teams on Baiano's channel remained at 20 to 30K peak viewers. The situation occurred on January 21st when switching from one region to another. Brazilian viewers lingered a bit on Baiano's broadcast. As a result, by the time the match between Cloud9 and 100 Thieves began on his channel, there were 63,000 peak viewers, although this number was reduced to 28,000 by the end of the match, and that's a best of one. It is thanks to this lag that LCS Spring 2024 was able to achieve a good peak online viewership. So they were already, Riot was already, and the co-streamers were already kind of manipulating this transition between LEC and CBLOL and LCS to kind of achieve better numbers. So that's pretty important as well. But what we can say, guys, is that because Cadril was getting 30, 40,000, Baiano was getting 30,000, we can pretty confidently say that even though average viewership did go up, the number of North American viewers almost certainly went down, right? Because presumably, when we saw the Spanish broadcast here, now, some of these Spanish language fans may have been North American. They could have been Mexican, or they could have been people who live in America or Canada who speak Spanish, of which there are plenty, who are watching this in Spanish. Whereas the Portuguese stream, none of these people are American, guys. None of these people are North American. These are all actual Portuguese people, or most likely they are Brazilians because they're on Baiano's stream. And also Cadril, even though Cadril, I'm sure, has a healthy amount of North American fans, probably 2/3, 3/4 of Cadril's fans who are watching him are probably European. And why it matters that we have North American sponsors, guys, is because LCS, when they take on sponsors, for the most part, they are going to be dipping into North American marketing budgets. Even if it's a major global corporation, it's the American marketing budget that their money is coming out of. And also they have sponsors now like Pagoda, who is a subsidiary of Schwann's, which is a frozen food manufacturer in America. And to my knowledge, Pagoda's egg rolls or spring rolls are not sold anywhere besides America. And certainly they don't care if those are sold beyond maybe America and Canada, right? So advertising to a bunch of Portuguese speakers via a co-stream or Europeans via a co-stream is not accomplishing the goals of the league. And because we can see, and there were already probably a bunch of AFK Europeans watching LEC that then got transferred over to the LCS channel. We can't know this, but it would not surprise me if now the majority, as in over 50% of these 120,000 average concurrent viewers are actually not North American. Which is a big problem if you're selling to North American sponsors, because you either, and they ask for your demographic information, like this would be shared obviously with sponsors. And what this means is they are either giving you half the rate because only 50% of your audience is North America. So you're either getting like a 50% cut of what, or the 50% price of what you should get for the sponsorship based on the viewership. Or the sponsors are just getting fleeced, which probably means that they're not going to be coming back anytime soon. And we've had a lot of sponsors leave. We don't have State Farm on LCS anymore. And they obviously sold insurance in America. And so American viewership was going to be very important, but they left. We saw Budweiser leave, which primary obviously is going to sell beer to a North American audience. And yeah, we've had other brands come in. So recently, like I think like Kia's in for North America now, even though they've been in Europe for a long time. HyperX, I believe they signed a deal with. They've had the Red Bull deal going for a while. But the Red Bull deal also covers LEC and global events. So that might be coming out of their global marketing budget. There is like a bunch of nuances to this. But the take that average viewership is good for the league is not true unless it is North American viewership. And I suspect that this is one of the reasons why Riot is now switching their partnership model from revenue to a stipend, which is what has already been announced. Because viewership, any level of increase in viewership is good for Riot because they sell more skins. But they don't sell the skin, they don't share the skin money with the teams. So basically, Riot is saying through their actions that it is less important that we receive partnership revenue than we get the highest possible audience, no matter where these people are from, because the most important thing is that we sell more digital goods and games. And the teams don't know how many digital goods have been sold because Riot doesn't disclose that information to anybody. And since this is primarily a marketing exercise, we don't know how much of the actual digital revenue they've tied to esports. Like, for example, do the esports viewers through lolesports.com who have linked their account, do those accounts purchase more on average than the average user? Almost certainly yes, is the answer to that. Do these people play more games of League of Legends? Have they played for an average longer period of time? Are they the whales of this scene? In which case, then it makes absolute sense to spend hundreds of millions of dollars potentially on esports if you're seeing a return from these people buying skins. When a famous player plays a skin, does the skin sales hit a huge spike? Now, they're not sharing any of this data with the teams. Instead, they are saying, we're just going to keep this secret. But you know what? Don't worry about the sponsorships anymore. It's now a flat stipend. It's a stipend of, well, I wouldn't say flat. It is a stipend. And you don't have to worry about the revenue splits anymore because the revenue split is likely going down, guys, especially because they lost their big sponsor, which was FTX, during the FTX collapse. And FTX was paying them an outrageous sum of money. So, this is all to say that this viewership is like an okay increase on average, but you have fewer hours watched because of the nature of the league. And it's kind of a wash because, the 11K difference in average viewer, there is definitely fewer North American viewers on average watching, in spite of the shift back to weekends, in spite of the changes to the broadcast, in spite of the more competitive games. They just filled this with Brazilians and Europeans. So there you go. Now, we can also look at this historically and say, Monty, why is the LCS in a death spiral? So I don't have, very good data for prior to 2021 because ES Charts is not an OG website. But I do, it turns out, have this little Reddit post of this Reddit user, Aaron SLD, who actually came in and has weekly threads about viewership from a number of years ago. Right? So it's pretty comprehensive from 7-8 years ago. And here is a post of somebody else who has aggregated this. And this is from, I believe, spring or summer 2016. But the point is you're going to be able to see this. So here's LCS. Now, here's the first 5 weeks of LCS. You can see that they used to have 241,000 average viewers for week 1 of regular season games. Okay? Average viewers across 5 weeks. And this is the double streams. So this is this was best of threes, actually, I think. 192,000 viewers per game. Right? EU LCS, 210,000 viewers per game. So, and by the way, LEC viewership has gone up since this time period. LEC has been doing very well. So we've seen a pretty significant drop, and we can, this is pre-COVID, and there was a COVID boost because people couldn't do other things, and we'll be taking a look at that in 2021 and 2022. But you can see that the average viewership average concurrent used to be much higher in like 2016, 2017. And LCS is the only one to suffer from this because actually LCK keeps hitting new highs. LPL is doing great. LEC viewership is way up because we've had the big co-streamers, like Kometo and Ibai joining and really boosting that viewership. So it really is just LCS that is suffering from its heights. And if we roll the clock back to spring 2021, this is like in the peak of COVID, right? Now we're looking at 415,000 peak viewers and 175,000 average concurrents. So this is a huge drop, 55,000 concurrents, and you're down from 415,000 to 246,000. So this is a massive drop from 2021. Even from 2022, you're still looking at 387,000 and 123,000 average. And so we've lost viewership from that point forward too. Right? So this is a pretty big shift. Again, fewer broadcast hours, but we're just looking at the average concurrent viewers. Even CBLOL. So CBLOL, their spring split, this is this year. So this tournament ongoing. By the way, CBLOL hasn't ended yet. This is not the finals, which is probably going to be the biggest viewership. They had 346,000 peak viewers, 21 million hours watched, 161,000 average concurrents. Biono, obviously the biggest streamer here. He's bigger than the mainstream now. He's the Tarek of CBLOL. So you look at this and you're like, oh shit, like this hasn't even ended yet. And they're already crushing LCS when it comes to viewership. So, this is a pretty massive problem, I would say. And having a slightly, Riot's going to spin this to be like, average viewership is up, guys. But they're not talking about why it's up. And it's like LEC hosts, Cadril, Biono, non-North American viewers, switch back to weekends. And it just, we have to ask so many questions about this, such as, why did we switch off of weekends in the first place? We were told that the data said that the switch to weekdays would be better. It surely couldn't have been because we wanted to put Valorant on the weekends and we had to bump League of Legends, right? That couldn't have been it. We don't have a pattern of bumping League of Legends for Valorant or anything like that. Oh, wait, we still have that. And we're going to get into that too, because that probably affected viewership in some way. And also, we continue to schedule things on weird days like Easter. We have now taken away the excitement of a stadium event in the spring and just had, a weird guy sing Rise in the studio. And we don't actually have a spring split finals anymore in a stadium like we did in Raleigh, North Carolina in 2023. So now only summer gets the roadshow event because, we're not cutting budget, guys, as we fire a bunch of the people on LCS in our layoffs and then don't do a stadium event. Yeah, okay, reasonable. So, yeah, the changes that were made. And also, you know, here's a question for you guys. If, it's a logical chain, if we like co-streamers because they have increased our average viewer count, then what changed from spring 2024, from spring 2023 to spring 2024, where all of a sudden we like Biano and Kadril co-streaming? So was co-streaming a bad idea a year ago, but now it's a good idea? Because Kadril wasn't allowed to co-stream LCS last year. And even going further back, if co-streaming LCS is such a genius idea, then why did they have it so several years ago people could only co-stream the super weeks in the playoffs, but they couldn't co-stream most of the regular season? So tell me, if it's a good idea, why didn't we do it before? And if we've discovered it was a good idea, how come we didn't fire the people who were claiming it was a bad idea previously? If it's such a genius move to have Biano bring a bunch of Portuguese viewers to co-stream LCS, why didn't we just let him do it last year? Right? Like, it doesn't make any sense, these decisions. So if you're saying that any increase in average viewership is good for LCS, then we absolutely should have made these decisions previously to add major co-streamers. But they didn't let Kadril do it, and they didn't let Biano do it, and I would love to know the reasoning behind that. So my suspicion is that this isn't actually a good thing. Like, it's not actually good for esports to have major co-streamers that can even be bigger than the main broadcasts. I think that's very actually bad for tournament control over esports, which you want, because you're not part of a fickle co-streamer who may just leave your game at any point in time or retire and then take your viewership with it. I think it's actually very bad. But many people like watching co-streams, and it does seem the way that a lot of broadcasts are going, not just in League of Legends, but obviously in every major esport. So if you want this, you know, why didn't we learn this lesson sooner would be my main question. And then we just have a bunch of super puzzling decisions that were made about this league in general, which we can see when it comes to the schedule. So as we start, okay, we started this year. I'll switch over here so you can see it. On January 20th, 2024. You're like, okay, 20th, 27th, February 2nd. Okay, February 10th. Wait, March 2nd? What happened here? Why do we have a 3-week break with nothing in there? Well, I'll tell you why, guys. Because VCT Americas was happening in the studio, and that needed to run on weekends for whatever reason. And so Valorant basically just supplanted League of Legends because they were running their group stages during that period of time. And even when we came back to the studio, guys, they had to do that weird-ass cage match thing because they couldn't use the main stage because Valorant was using it the same day. So it literally got pushed off for Valorant. And that wasn't the only time either, because as we fast forward to the playoffs, now remember, we've been running Saturday, Sunday, the entire split. Super Weeks, we ran Friday, Saturday, Sunday, okay? Now, all of a sudden, okay, round 1 of playoffs, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Makes sense. You know, we've got best of 5s that we need to run 1 a day. All right, I feel you. We'll add Thursday and Friday. Okay, round 2 of playoffs. Wait. Why are we Friday, Saturday, but no... Where's Sunday? Where's Sunday, guys? Oh, it turns out that VCT America's finals, Gen G versus Sentinels, was on Sunday. You might say to yourself, well, was that in North America? Nope. It was in Madrid, in Spain, in Europe. And guess what? LEC also got moved off that day. Now, I don't think there's a lot of... In fact, Riot themselves have said that there's not a lot of... crossover audience between League of Legends and Valorant esports, but they cleared off both LEC and LCS off that Sunday so that these finals would be the only Riot event going. Okay? So they have been manipulating the schedule very specifically to pander to Valorant, even when it is on a different fucking continent than the LCS. And why this matters for viewership is it's confusing to not have it on Sunday all of a sudden when it's been on Sunday every week. It's confusing to have a 3-week break in the middle of the regular split when people get this into, you know, they get into the groove of watching. It's also terrible to have it on Super Bowl Sunday. Did they take Super Bowl Sunday off? No, they didn't. They did a broadcast on Super Bowl Sunday, and then they took a bunch of weeks off. because it wasn't about Super Bowl Sunday. It was about when the group stage for VCT Americas were. So I guess they couldn't, quote unquote, move it off that Super Bowl Sunday and take a break, on Super Bowl Sunday instead. And then the creme de la creme, the shit cherry on the shit Sunday of their decision making, is that they once again ran the finals on Easter Sunday. Okay? So let's go back here. Now, it happened on March 31st. Bearing in mind that LEC, LPL, and LCK, as of the time I'm recording this on April 9th, have still not finished their splits. So they had plenty more time to play this finals. LCS did not have to end on March 31st. They could have taken a week off. They could have actually taken a week off between regular season and playoffs, right? That kind of would have made sense. But no, we had to play it on Easter Sunday. And by the way, guys, last year, they were criticized for playing the finals on Easter Sunday in spring when they did their event in Raleigh. And let me tell you something, guys. Doing something on Easter Sunday in the South, in America, no wonder that stadium wasn't full. People have family plans. People are doing other things, especially in arguably the most Christian part of America. So let's just actually take a look at our best friend, John Needham, head of Riot Esports, in an interview that he did with Travis Gafford, where Travis Gafford asks him about scheduling. Now, he said this a year ago, April 20th, 2023, in this interview about Easter Sunday. You guys ready?
Yeah, it was a mistake. It was unfortunate, and it's also unfortunate that we did finals on Easter, which I don't think was optimal either. We had to pivot the LCS finals fairly late, and venues were, it was difficult to land a venue, so we got a little stuck in what weekend we could do finals on. But as far as the times go, it's just a miss, man. And
so we had to pivot because of venues. So because of venues, it's unfortunate, and it was not optimal to have it on Easter Sunday. But this year, you don't have any venue. You own the venue that you're in. You own it. You have time to move it to a later date that isn't Easter Sunday. You intentionally chose Easter Sunday in the venue that you own, but last year you admit it was suboptimal to have it on Easter, and the only reason it happened was because of scheduling issues. And hey, guys, do you know why? Do you know why that stadium was available on Easter Sunday? Because it's a stupid time to have a live event. Because it's stupid. But you had your own stadium this time. You had your own arena. What are you doing? You don't have to end the LCS on March 31st. You have time. MSI is until, May 2nd? Other regions are still going on. There was no reason we had to schedule the league this way. There was no reason we had to move days because of VCT finals in fucking Madrid. Like, I just don't understand. And yet they will continue to crow about this viewership, even though they have, first off, done things that have definitely affected the viewership. It is, the takeaways here is it's clearly LCS viewership is not a priority compared to Valorant. It is also just, not a priority in general. And they don't care who is watching LCS as long as number goes up. But the thing is that sponsor number will not go up with what they're doing. And in fact, the core audience of North America fans is almost certainly decreased. It's almost certainly at its lowest level ever. And there's not really another way to interpret this. So I really wonder about the LCS. As for solutions, we know what the solution is. The solution is to create an America's League like we saw with VCT. In Valorant, they have Brazil, Latin America, and North America all as one league. And I think that on a long enough timeline, I actually think it's going to happen pretty fast, if we're going to be honest, because I think they're trying desperately to save this thing, is that there will be some combo made of CB, LOL, LLA, and LCS. That's my theory, especially because they keep putting people from Brazil in charge of Riot League of Legends esports for Americas. And because I think, to be fair, VCT Americas has been highly successful. The viewership is good. You get very good, regional rivalries and engagement. And I think it would frankly be better for LCS. Like, I approve of this merger. It will probably take them buying out a number of teams, like they bought out, Evil Geniuses at the start of this split, at the start of this year, in order to make that happen, because you actually have to reduce the number of both Brazilian and LCS teams in order not to oversaturate it with too many teams. But I think my guess is that in switching the team participation agreement and saying our new proposal is stipends, another secret part of this is, in fact, potentially the ability to merge CBLOL and LCS and possibly also LLA. I think that's probably a behind the scenes thing that they may have done. At least they've discussed it. And will it go into action quickly? Like for 2025? I don't know. I think they might move as fast as 2025 to consolidate these leagues. I think it would be welcomed by many of the ownership groups, especially because they are trying desperately to make money and show number go up, so they could possibly get more investment from the outside if venture capital starts to return, if federal interest rates go down. So I think there are a lot of factors to this, and I think ultimately that the way to stop the death spiral is to merge regions. Riot surely knows this, but there isn't anything about these numbers that makes you believe that this is going to solve itself, or because they've now pulled basically every rabbit out of the hat. They moved it back to weekends. They got the LEC raids. They allowed the big co-streamers in. The next step might be allowing like Ibai and Kometo into they might open the co-streaming floodgates even further to try and make number go up. That's probably the last possible thing they could do. But it's never going to hit those old numbers that we saw ever again. It's not. You also lost TSM, the most popular team from your league. That took a lot of the fans with it. So I think what you're going to end up seeing is a pretty drastic change within the ecosystem of League of Legends in the Americas as a result of this. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this analysis. If you guys have any points, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Remember, of course, to like and subscribe. Thank you very much. See you next time. All right. I stopped my recording, guys. How'd you like the video? One take wonder. That's me, buddy. Do it again. I could probably do it better the second time. Probably be more succinct. But I think it was pretty good. Do you guys have any questions or things that you think I missed? Also, I will thank Wander Stranding again. And also, sorry I missed this, Harry Hedger, thank you for your YouTube membership. I would love to discuss this topic after you've done the video. Yeah, you, add your comments. We'll chat about it. Thank you, Garmvup. You're back. Thank you for your tier 1 subscription. I appreciate it. How much does TSM's departure affect the viewership as a whole? We can't know that, but I would imagine it's not insignificant. It's probably a pretty big deal. Right? It's probably a pretty big deal. If the leagues merge, would all the teams have to move to LA? I don't know. Probably. I mean, the most cost-effective thing would be to force the LCS teams to move to Brazil, which would be fucking hilarious. I'm in favor of that, personally. Well, is he region locked? Is the future of the open circuit? No, never. I don't think so. AFK viewer argument more. Isn't the percentage of AFK viewers the same in LCS and LEC? Yes, it's true, but at least a part of those LEC viewers were actively watching at one point in time. And then, you know, they may have gone AFK by the time that's rated over, right? Do you think making current pro LCS players stream will help viewership? Probably. Do you think all the Korean imports has also caused low viewership? Nah. People love Core JJ, man. Just if they're good and they stick around. What can Riot do to get young people to play League? Well, they should have never done the shitty ass deals they did with Play Versus to, you know, basically kick it out of high schools. That was terrible. Marketing initiatives. I don't know. I'm not a marketing expert. How close are we to ESL running LCS? I think it might happen next year. I think the Saudis might run it next year. How can you tell an active viewer from an AFK one? That's the neat thing. You can't. How long until CB LOL teams win LCS? I mean, frankly, I think Brazilian players want to win more. They're just in a non-competitive region. So if they actually had access to better scrims, they might get better. Do you think Riot has ever actually measured skin sales versus pro players playing them? Yes, I'm sure they have internal data. I've heard you mention all that, but I'd be surprised if they had their shit together enough to be that dialed in. Oh my God. Harry Hedger, I am sure that Riot has some PhD statisticians who are doing business analytics for them, and they would not be spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year on esports if they didn't think it was good for them. The John Needham clip was a little low. What am I supposed to do? I can only go with what they say. I didn't insult John Needham, but it is ridiculous that he said those things. Yeah, Medic. I have zero doubt they've done the numbers. Of course they have. That would be absurd. They wouldn't have spent over a decade spending hundreds of millions of dollars esports if they didn't have the numbers. And then and then why would they have started esports and Valorant, running it themselves if they didn't like esports? Imagine how much Faker cost them by playing without skins. It's kind of balanced out by the fact that Faker has skins in the game, though, don't you think? Oh, low in volume. Oh, well, sorry about that. Dude, the Easter stuff is so tilting. I can't even handle it. Yo, Easter viewership was ass. Let's run it back. It was not optimal. Muffin72. Do you even corporate speak? Likelihood of pay to watch model, very low, especially because they killed their own streaming platform now. All right, any other questions you guys have? The merge would be huge. Having multiple regions in LCS makes it much more interesting. It does. I mean, I think it's a good change. I think they will make this change quickly. I think it'd be very good for LCS. It'd be hype. Yamato said he doesn't think there are any scrim leaks for that G2 BDS lane swap. All right, here we go. I'll tell you why I think there were. I will tell you why I think there were. I think my good old evidence here is going to be pretty strong. I gotta find the right VOD of BDS Heretics from last year.
The last best of one, we know how incredible Jankos' stats were, but just a reminder.
All right, it's this one.
Oh, here it is.
And by the way, let me be clear about this, guys. When I say I think there were leaks, I don't mean that like literally people were sharing scrim VODs. What I mean is that I think the pro players always talk to each other. Sometimes they do share scrim VODs, by the way, little shitters. I think that it's especially common amongst Korean and Chinese teams at international events. I think that in the past, there have been Asian teams that have been very open with each other on opposite sides of the bracket about, you know, the other team's opponents that they're scrimming. Because the main goal is to like get a Korean team to win Worlds. And so if you're on opposite sides of the bracket, you're scrimming potentially the other Korean team's opponents. And I think that almost certainly there has been significant data, if not outright video files shared between these teams. But in this case, I do not mean that I do not believe that a video file was shared. I think pro players were like, lol. They type in their little Discord with their little pro player fingers. Lol, G2 was swapping in our scrim versus us. That's what I think happened. Because they would have been more prepared if they actually had a video. Right. So, yeah, I think it's more innocuous. I agree, Naja fan. I think it's more innocuous than that. I do not think that there was, I do not think or have evidence that there was any kind of swapping at all, to be clear. It's just my suspicion, and I'm going to show you why I suspect this. It's a little too convenient. Also, guys, when I tweeted about it, I was getting banter back from Duffman and Rodrigo, the analyst and coach from G2, who were saying, oh, yeah, it was just really lucky. Like, it's clear they're not going to accuse BDS of doing that, but even G2 staff appears to believe that there was some level of leak. It was kind of sussy. And I'll show you why, because a lot of the evidence that people are citing here has nothing to do with the game that was played. Okay? It's nothing to do with the game that was played, that we saw. Including Adam on Twitter telling me about the FPX NIP game, which I've seen, that has nothing to do with what the lane swap was in that game. So I'm going to show you why this is suspicious, because all you guys are hearing is, oh, it happened in LPL. Oh, BDS did a Scion strat last year. None of that has any relevance to what I am about to show you. And when you watch the videos with your eyes, you are going to see why this is suspicious, because you're not just getting second-hand information that these things are similar, because they're not really that similar. Okay? They're not. And I think BDS doth protest too much. That's what I think at this point in time. So, as I say this, let's take a look at FPX versus NIP Game 4. And because G2 said that they were inspired, and on Twitter, Adam said to me that they were aware and had watched this game. So first off, let's just talk about this. Differences that we see already. So first off, Shanji is playing Udyr, not Sion, and this is a Nautilus and not a Lulu. Okay? I do agree that when you play Sion and then Jinx Lulu, it is more suspicious that it is going to be a lane swap, which makes it easier to call if you're BDS. But again, this is not the same composition. Remember, they had an Aurelion Soul in the mid lane as well. G2, that is. So it's quite different already. Okay, we're going to pay extra close attention right now, guys, to this level 1. We do a standard spread, and then we recall out. Okay, this is very different than what we're going to see with the BDS G2 game. Very different. Okay, so there is no... First off, they're on red side. Very important to note they're on red side. They leave a ward behind. Then they are going to, in fact, walk into top lane. Okay? Shanji is showing here. Shanji is showing here, and we've seen level 1 Udyr invades, especially into topside jungle starts, from red side into blue buff. This is very common. We see it around the world right now. So this is not unusual. Guys, it's not unusual because Udyr can be very annoying at level 1, especially compared to Redectin and Lee Sin, and especially if he has backup from Poppy here in the jungle. So the lane swap has begun, guys. Notice we saw recall from River. So they did a normal level 1 spread, the least suspicious thing of all time, recalled, walk to lane. Udyr comes in jungle, Poppy's applying pressure. This is also not weird in and of itself, okay? So it's important to note how lane swaps used to work back in the day. It's very important to note this to understand. Now, typically, what happened with lane swaps is that you would have a 3-for-0, 3-0, or a 4-0 push on your lane swap lane. And what this means is that we would see jungle follows in the early game. So because, remember, lane swaps are about denying the top laner first and foremost. And typically, whoever's top laner gets denied less experience and levels is the team that wins the lane swap. Okay? So what we would frequently see is, because the duo would be lane swapped up here, is an invade onto this side, and we would see a jungle follow. So the top laner will literally help the jungler take a few camps. Well, what happens up here is we slow push this wave into the turret, and then the top laner peels off, or the jungler can come too. That's what 3-0 is, when the top laner comes. So when the wave is coming in, to prevent anybody from taking that wave, the top laner can zone people off and goes to take down the turret and deny the minion wave, okay? And sometimes the jungler comes too. So it is very dangerous to be one person under this turret when the wave crashes. You do not want to be the one person. You will get dove, you will die, you will be denied the XP. So the counterplay was literally to do the same thing on the other side of the map. Same shit, you invade, then you get 3 people at the turret, your top laner's there, but your top laner's following your jungler for the first 3 camps on this side, and then you decide, okay, this is when the wave is crashing, and your jungler can either go here or here into their own jungle. Okay, that is how you play. All right. So what happens this game is weird, and I don't think NIP probably wanted to do an OG style lane swap and just do the invade, but Xiaolahu doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. So he actually just gets caught by Shanji, who's a level 1 Udyr. And again, this is a very common strat. And they would not know that this was a lane swap because Udyr invades at level 1 onto topside starting junglers are what we would consider normal. So Xiaolahu gets very low. Now look at what happens. NIP is going to hide in this brush because this guy is low, and they know if he goes to lane, he's dead. Or they're going to try. He's actually, okay, he's not technically dead, but you'll see why in a second. He's in a really rough situation where there either has to recall and then use his TP. Now, currently, he's not that worried because he thinks Shanji is just going to walk to this top side. Okay?
We have a lane swap as well.
But they have a ward down. And he comes back up because he doesn't see Shanji coming back. So he's like, ooh, maybe I can get some of that sweet, sweet lane action and heal up a little bit. I've got a pot. I've got Doran's shield. It's going to be a 1v1. Maybe I could get a level advantage, especially Shanji's showing in the mid lane. Oops. There's a Nautilus there. He actually does take E at level 1. And he double E's out. And he actually lives astonishingly. And then from now on, they just set up this dive. Okay? But you'll also notice that on the bot side, because FPX doesn't know how to counter this Udyr is going to get the XP from the wave crashing into the turret. Okay? Meanwhile, Aki is level 2, so he has E now. So he can actually just flash E, Q, buckler shot, kill him, right? And Shanji's like, well, it's not crashing yet, so I might as well fuck with Kara in the mid lane because he's playing this garbage Diana that has no escape mechanism, so it's free, and we force a flash, and he has 0 HP, and we barely don't kill him. I mean, Rookie literally, it's like single-digit HP. So Shanji almost got a kill there as well. So he almost got 2 kills on both solo laners. And then you'll watch him go down here. And they're going to try this dive onto Shanji. Care goes topside, but he gets wall-banged and killed because you actually just, you can't be there. You can't be there. It's illegal to be there in a lane swap. And by the way, this is typical also, which is that sometimes the top laner, after the first wave crashes, will swap lanes and hang out with the Udyr or with the top laner for a little bit to catch the wave.
Another shuriken from the Ninjas lands, but we now see Shanji. Maybe he can get over. It's very hard to dive. Early game Udyr all the same though. What's he leveled up?
Yeah, it is very hard. And also Udyr, as we're going to see, has very good pressure in the lane thanks to the wave clear of his R. Now, reworked Udyr was not a part, 10 years ago when this was happening. But he is collecting a lot of XP. And remember what I said. It's all about the XP, baby. Level 2, he just hit level 3. And he may have 0 CS, but that doesn't matter. It's just he needs the levels. Okay? Diana already used TP, so they're going to use a TP here from Rookie's Ahri on this dive instead. So it actually just dissuades the dive entirely. And you're even on TPs because Shanji made the play to get him low. And then also Zhou is now here, and they get a kill, which is huge. So basically, FPX is getting styled on in this lane swap scenario. Oh my god, he gets Milky Way with that hook too, which is just mega. They get 3 kills. And the game's over now, guys. The game is over. Shanji is super ahead. They have perma prio. The Jinx is just cleaning up this in mid lane after pushing. They can now just swap lanes again if they want. Udyr can go top, catch this wave. He's like perma ahead of Xiaolahu basically after this wave crashes. And he is basically, because what Udyr does is he creates tempo by wave clearing super fast. They will constantly be 1 step ahead on the lane swap.
I love the LCS.
And the purpose of this lane swap was to avoid the hail of blades, Varus, and the very abusive, support rumble from Life. So because FPX likes to play these super aggro bot lanes and get bot lane prio, NIP wanted to scale with a Jinx, but they didn't want to be in that lane that would absolutely crush them, which is the same thing that we're going to see with G2, right? They are, in fact, avoiding a double Hail of Blades Varus Ashe lane, which is very punishing, right? Udyr now has prio in the top side. He's pushed up. He's a level up. You got a ton of kills. You have a 3k gold lead. And they're just going to keep switching, the Udyr and Jinx back to back. The rest of the game is kind of irrelevant to the point that I'm making now. But remember that level 1, okay? Now, I'm also going to show you something else. I'm also going to show you something else because a lot of people are referencing, oh, BDS knows how to do this because they did the Scion cheese. So let's watch it. Let's see how similar this is to a lane swap. You guys tell me what you think.
Yeah, I mean, looking at these drafts, no lie, it will be.
Okay, so if we go back to the draft, you know, it's still going to be... Hold up. Gotta load. It's going to be a blind Scion. Oh, it's not blind. It's actually into Gragas, but whatever. It's going to be a Scion pick here. And so we ask ourselves, okay, well, that's weird. This wasn't a Scion meta. And, you know, crucially, this BDS squad from last year, the only player they swapped was Crowny for Ice. So it's the same roster. So you say, oh, well, maybe they're used to some Scion cheese. This is not really anything like a lane swap, guys. And the fact that you can do Scion cheese, and let me just be clear, you can do a lot of different Scion cheese. You can do buff Scion cheese, where he, like, walks into enemy buff, takes the buff, and then just commits suicide and then TPs to lane. Or he takes the buff and then TPs to lane, right? You can do what they're doing, which is, like, dive cheese. Or you can swap, right? Because Scion's very difficult to dive under a turret. He's very survivable. And he's got decent push, right? And he, you know, he does stuff if he's dead, which is also important. Because he can trade back kills, maybe. And also, Gragas is very good in lane swaps, by the way. So maybe this is not the game to do that. It's not a lane swap, though, as you'll see. Okay. So they are going to be playing red side on this invade. They're taking a look at it. But this is actually somewhat similar to the old style of lane swaps, at least in the jungle pathing, but it's without the swap, which makes it very different because it's literally not a swap. It's also hilarious how badly executed this is, but we'll get into that.
I am committed to this level 1 psychotic Scion flash over the wall. Because I'm telling you, they always do it and it pisses me off. Here he comes.
Winning lotto numbers now.
Are they invading? 7, 7, 6, 7, 7, 4, 3.
Don't game.
No, here it is.
Okay, so remember how we said in the last VOD that typically when we lane swapped, we'd have your bot lane there, except they'd be top in this instance. Then we'd have the invade, right, with the jungler in the top laner. So that's what this looks like. And this is what it would look like if,
I hate it so much.
you know, FBX had played this properly and had actually done this, except they were blue side. Whatever, you guys get it. On the bot side, which is like, this is how you would start a 3-0 to 4-0 lane swap back in the day. Is you literally just power up your jungler, super quick clear, mega leash, right? Except because this is a lane swap, and it was never intended to be a lane swap, they didn't swap, and they would have no expectation that Jack Spectra and Mersa would be going topside. This is actually a tower dive. So they have a more powerful lane, they're pushing in, and then they crash the wave. That's wave 2. That's wave 2. So remember, because this is so fast, it's actually a second wave dive, which is a very creative strategy. But they smell it because there's no Scion in the top lane. And so basically the idea here, guys, is at this point in time, there's kind of like a fork in the road. One of the forks says dive on the 2 wave, right? This is wave 3 here. The other fork says TP top. So you have the opportunity for Scion to TP top and catch this wave. Or you dive and then TP top. Or you dive, tank with Scion. You tank with Scion and then you TP top. Right? Because he dies, he does some extra damage, you get a double kill, whatever, right? And you still catch this wave in the top side because nobody fucking expects a level 2 or a second wave turret dive with a Scion. Okay, so now you baited out this TP. So now, guys, Adam should TP top. This is where you abort the play and you TP top. However, Adam are very smart. And he literally gets his TP denied because Mersa hooks him blind in a bush. because they read them like a fucking book.
Oh, it was so smart right up until it was real.
And then he loses the wave into the tower and is very sad.
But he could turn into a zombie.
A solo kick? What just happened?
What is happening? What? Ruby's dead.
Oh, he goes first blood.
And also Sheo's in mid lane killing Ruby, which is, you know, a nice bonus.
First, they go first blood first, so they didn't get it. It was hit him.
Now you see why the level 1 Scion is very good here, because, I mean, you get a double kill, right? He actually trades back, which is great. But you're going to lose a fuck ton in the top lane. The wave literally bounced off the tower and is now heading back, so top lane might get frozen.
I just think
Actually, oh no, this is the replay. Let's check out the wave state afterwards. Yeah, now you're just fucked. Now you're just fucked, right? It's cool that you killed Thresh. It's cool that you killed mid, but Evie is just going to fat man fuck you in the top side forever,
Adam level 2.
right?
Wait.
I mean, the thing is, if he turns into a zombie, if he doesn't, if Evie E's in, he can't E out, and then he gets hit by the zombie.
He has 3 creeps at 5 hands.
Root now going in. That's big lockup. Feathers pulled back. LeBron.
You're also down in levels on this bot side. So, yeah, Ruby completely ignored the fact BDS had everybody bot half. Yeah, Ruby was a bad player. But this is, it turns into just a clown fiesta at this point in time. So, you know, when people were saying the other day, guys, or when I made my presumption on Twitter/x.com that I thought that it was very suspicious what we were seeing if there were no scrim leaks, I was told, well, you remember when BDS did the Scion strat? Does this look anything like a lane swap to you guys? Taking the first 3 camps looks like a lane swap, but nothing else looks like a lane swap, right? I mean, I guess the punish was kind of the same in that if the top laner TP'd into that situation, you dive them, but there are already 2 players in the bot side, and usually you wouldn't do a play where it's like you force their TP and then TP into the top lane. The whole thing is just wacky. Don't say that, Monty. Ruby probably still is a bad player. True. So, like, this isn't really an analog, and just because you did an instance of Scion cheese doesn't necessarily mean you know the lane swap is coming, and it doesn't make any sense why they would do the level 1 that they did in this game that we're about to watch. Let me pull it up. So you guys can be the judge of this yourselves after having watched that and see if you think maybe I have a leg to stand on here when I am suspicious about scrim leaks. Because I'm pretty sure G2 shares my suspicions. And let's talk about the draft first, as the draft actually is important, and it does tip your hand. And I'll compile the evidence at the end, and we can kind of weigh up the pros and cons. So right here, they blind pick the Scion into an R5 top pick. Now, when you see, remember, they see Varus volley, right? And Ashe is still up. And remember that BDS loves Ashe more than anything. They played a ton of Ashe in Winter Split. They fucking love Ashe. They love Ashe Varus. They love both these champions. You pick Jinx Lulu, which is going to get galactically bodied by Hail of Blades Varus and Hail of Blades Ashe. It's similar to the FPX game, right? Where there was a super aggro bot lane. And on top of that, you have a Volibear who can dive. So you are pooping in your little pants if you're playing Jinx Lulu into that, especially because we're playing Aurelion Sol mid lane. Oh, buddy. I love having no mid pressure, no way to roam into bot, fucking teleporting down there doing nothing. Like, there are tells here. Clearly, you're pretty happy with this. And BDS is probably like, they're blind picking Scion. You know what else is funny? Scion is pretty shit into Adam's weird, wacky-ass champion pool. I don't want to play Scion into, like, Adam's gods champs. That sounds like a horrible experience. So they're like, is this a bait? Are there shenanigans? And I do think that any team, professional team, could look at this draft and be like, all right, there are some shenanigans here. So we agree on that. But it's not the fact that there are shenanigans. It's the reaction that BDS has that I find so suspicious. Oh, it's not on the draft scene? Sorry. Well, you guys get it. I'll do it again for you guys. Okay? I'll do it again for the sake of the video that's going to be made out of this. So basically, you know, we see the blind Scion. We are picking Jinx and Lulu into Varus Volibear, knowing that BDS loves Ashe and played a ton of Ashe in winter. There is 2x Hail of Blades in the bot lane, plus Divey Bear. You would be scared out of your mind to play Lulu Jinx into this. And also, Scion is not a great pick into Adam's God's top lane champion pool, right? This just seems weak. So I think any professional team would look at this and say, are there shenanigans afoot? Are there? The answer is yes. Now, here's a more relevant question. If you believe, and this is actually in BDS's favor, if you believed that this was a lane swap, would you R5 Aatrox? The answer is no. You know, it's much more reasonable to take the Zac, which, Broken Blade does later in the series. Gnar was often a popular answer back in the day. Now, a lot of champions have changed. There have been a bunch of new champions released. Gragas, great pickup. Adam also plays Gragas, so Gragas probably would have been a better answer here. Safe champions in the lane swap. So that, I will say, +1 point to BDS for not knowing that this was a lane swap by stupidly picking Aatrox. Does make it a little bit less suspicious. But, you know, the thing about this is that it's just so suspicious as to what happens at level 1, because they basically all in on the top side. But I still think you've got a huge amount of mid jungles control for BDS here, where you can have Volibear play down into the... So let's watch what happens, because you're going to see it's very different from those other games that I referenced. Okay, so remember in the FPX NIP game, we saw the spread through the river. They kind of do it this way again, but they're a little further back. And we're going to write down the information that BDS has. So they immediately Oracle's Lens. So Lens is going to be down on Labrov. They see Mickey X, right? That's Nuke's ward right there at 49 seconds. So they get one ward there. Let's check out their wards. They get one ward here, and one ward here. These are not the wards that you put down for lane swaps, guys. Actually, this one is, to be fair. This one is. You ward here, and you ward here, and you ward here. The reason why you ward in these locations is because you need time to see what they're doing, and this covers every possible avenue that they could go to lane, and it gives you the earliest possible information about who is going to lane. Because you need that time to adequately get the lanes that you want if you do not want to lane swap. And let's be clear, BDS does not want to lane swap. They do not want to get this Jinx super activated. They do not want to have a super poor Aatrox. They want to bully with this lane. They do not want to lane swap. So the wards you put down are here so that basically the ways you walk to lane, well, while hiding, right, are here, here, or through here. Okay? If you're walking all the way around, then you also have time to react. It is basically because in that case, sometimes you like stack up here in your mid lane so that as soon as you see somebody, you can assign lanes super quickly. Right? Or you stand in your own jungle and like cheat towards one side. All right? So that's how this works.
seen them try and split the map here. You give that control to Ice.
So, also, Mickey X has Demolish in this game, which is hilarious on the Lulu because they want a lane swap. Okay, all right. So, what did we see in the FPX game? We saw the quick recall. We saw the quick recall. And then they swapped lanes. And instead, what happened? Remember, this is really important, guys. This is really important to understand why I think there was a leak. What did they do in the FPX game? They recalled from River on the spread. Then they sent the Jinx and the Nautilus. Remember, they were on red side. So they sent them down this lane into this brush. Okay? Now, we don't see that here. They just back off and walk into this river for an invade. Okay, so remember, this is blue side doing the lane swap instead of red side, which is different. But clearly, but most importantly, they recalled and just walked through lane. Okay, and why I'm mentioning that is because if they walk into lane, there'll be no evidence. There's no evidence where the Jinx and the Lulu are because the wards are here and here. So they could have backed off and they could have pushed into bot. They could have backed off and they could have pushed into top. Now, you may ask yourself, why would they push into bot? Well, here's the thing. It is very common in the current meta, so not in the meta back in the day, crucially, very common in the current meta, if there is a bully lane down here, to have 4 or 5 people go into these brushes with a lens, right? They have a lens. And clear wards, especially so the Hail of Blades lane can't get early vision and Hail of Blades proc you in the brushes. Okay? Does that make sense to you guys? So having no wards means that it is a possible not lane swap, and this is very, very important, because they could have just recalled and 5-stacked or 4-stacked here to get lane prio for their losing lane to prevent them from losing as hard. Okay? I don't think that's the most likely outcome, but it is a possibility. Okay? So instead, we see Mickey X here. We see Jinx walk 2 lane through lane, just like the Jinx in the last game. And let me ask you a question, guys. Here's the big mystery. Given the information that BDS have, so the information they have is 1, Mickey X was here at 49 seconds. No idea where he is now. There could be 4 people in this brush. There could be 4 people up here. Now, it is true again that usually the lane swap starts with the jungle and top lane going for the invade. But my point here is BDS is gambling everything on this being a lane swap. Because what happens, guys, with the amount of information they have if Jinx and Lulu just pop up here? There is no way for Ice and Labrov to get into this lane. And even though they have a very, very powerful 2v2, very powerful, they're going to be behind. Right? They're going to be behind. You know, there's also the possibility that everybody walked through this brush. And remember, guys, I was told that the BDS play, so let's think about it for a second. How does BDS know that this isn't the play that was going to happen to them? That they did last year. Because the BDS play was, we're going to walk in here, right? We're going to take these 3 camps with Sion, then we're going to threaten a dive on the 2 wave. Now, it's unlikely that Hansama and Mickey X would be able to push into Hail of Blades, Varus, or Ashe. But, guys, how could they get that push? Oh, well, if Ice and Labrov aren't there. That's a great way to get that push that they need into that bot turret. And then you have two people in the jungle. One of them's going to be a Rel who has a higher level than either Ice or Labrov, intercepting them on the way to the turret. So with the amount of information that they have, my question and why I suspect that there was a leak, even though I can't possibly know, let me underscore that, I can't possibly know, is because they all end at 1:30 into the top side with no recent information when this could have been literally the Sion play that they made last year. And instead, they get Sheo's in this brush. G2 does not see Sheo go into the brush. They get seen, and then they get collapsed on. Like, BDS loses if it's not a lane swap, is the point that I'm trying to make. So you guys decide, was this an incredibly good gamble by BDS that it was in fact a lane swap? In which case, I mean, they still lose this game, and they still play the lane swap super bad. But did they really just all in on this being a lane swap with the very limited amount of information that they have? I would argue that this is either a scrim leak or stupid. You pick which one it is. It's either scrim leak or stupid. Because to all in right here could potentially lose you all your advantages. You might end up in a lane swap anyway. So if Ice and Labrov are here and they go up here because nobody's showing, but all of a sudden Jinx and Lulu just pop up in this bot lane, well then you just gave G2 what they wanted. You just gave to G2 the lane swap they wanted. So they literally rolled the dice on this, but I find it very suspicious that they would all in on a possible topside invade when this could have equally been, in the current meta, a push through the bot lane early on in the game with 4 or 5 people to detect wards, or an invade into their own jungle, right? And the result of this play could be that Ice and Labrov have to go topside, even if there aren't any shenanigans, right? But it is suspicious. You know, the blind pick Sion, especially into Adam's champ pupil, is mega suspicious. I agree with that. I think that BDS was correct that there were some shenanigans. Playing Jinx Lulu into Varus Ashe double Hail of Blades is garbage. So there's that issue as well. Yeah, why would G2 pick Sion just do nothing? True. But again, guys, it's not about doing nothing. It's about the fact that BDS 5 stacks in their top jungle with almost no information when this could have been one of several different plays. And they lucked into the right one. Perhaps, I mean, we can argue it's the most likely one, but it does seem very unusual to me. And the evidence that was offered, such as, oh, we saw NIP versus FPX do this. This looks nothing like the beginning of the game of NIP versus FPX. Nothing like it. Besides the fact that there was a topside invade, but the actual play pattern was super different. And it doesn't look like anything like the Sion cheese that we saw from BDS last year. Did BDS deny the leak? Well, Adam denied my tweet about it, which is why we're watching this video. Thank you, ZZ Cookie, for your Twitch Prime sub. I appreciate you. Nobody's ever going to admit this, guys. I'm never going to have any evidence. Chakarez, for what it's worth, was listening to comms, and he said he didn't hear any indication of that. But again, BDS is not going to be like, it's just like we heard in scrims about their scrims. They're lane swapping. They're just going to be like, they're lane swapping. Right? They're not going to... esports is really stupid, so maybe they would give themselves away, but most people would just be like, oh, yeah, we heard, they're lane swapping because they had a conversation about it previously. So, there are a ton of different Sion cheeses that you can do. Some of them do involve going into the top side jungle, right? But also, they could have just gone into the bot side jungle like BDS themselves did last year in the 2v2. Threaten the dive. Even if they see that coming, Ice and Labrov are going to be far less likely to push You know, and even if they do push, okay, you clear the side of the jungle. And because the map architecture has changed, guys, because the map architecture have changed, you know, Adam is going to be slow rolling this wave. So let's pretend they do the bot side thing that BDS did. Okay, so they spread out, and then, okay, so Sion and Rel go in here. They push in together as 4. Then they double back. And at that point, Ice and Labrov have to think about, do we push this out? And because the architecture of the map has changed, this path is now super dangerous, right? It's not just a tower dive anymore. If they push and use their aggressive advantage, then they could just be ganked from behind. Red side, you guys know, if you play bot lane, red side bot lane is ass cheeks. It's so easy to get ganked there. So my assumption from my knowledge of how lane swaps used to work, from watching these other games, is that BDS, it's either they hard gambled on a lane swap, or they knew that G2 was lane swapping, and so they did a 5-man play here. So that's why I made the tweet I did. I think it's reasonable to be suspicious that this was a scrim leak. And I think that on the balance, I think this is more likely a scrim leak than not a scrim leak. And if your question was, well, how did they, you know, how did they not have a better response to this? Lane swaps are very complicated, guys. And if none of these players on BDS have ever played, they're too young to have played in this meta, whereas like Caps has played in this meta, Hansama has played in this meta, Mickey X has played in this meta, I believe. And, you know, knowing it's going to happen is far different than actually living it. And you can see as this series goes on, they try different stuff and it still is scuffed. It's also possible, like, we don't know when they, if it was leaked, when they would have heard about it. They could have heard about this, guys. Like, they could have just been going to the studio, and then all of a sudden one of the BDS guys talks to a different team and they're like, oh yeah. Or like that morning messaged them and was like, oh yeah, G2 they've been swapping. So they may not have had time to prepare. You know, there's so many different ways that the leak could have occurred, and I do think that it was likely, if it happened, was kind of innocuous and not overly detailed. So, but I just find this, out of all the possibilities, the fact that Ice and Labrov gambled on swapping themselves here, and then therefore getting the unfavorable lane matchup with the amount of information they had, super sus. You know, if I'm playing Among Us, I'm calling a fucking emergency meeting over this, dude, because somebody on BDS is definitely the imposter. Deductive logic says that they're either dumb or giant-ass gamblers, or they knew something.
And now he's going to reset and try and catch this wave as Adam clears it out and move back into the bottom side. So it is a little bit of a weird start here.
Considering how poorly they respond to lane swap when it goes off, it's impossible they made the successful level 1 counter without considerable preparation. That's another good point. Like, they play the rest of it super badly.
You know, we haven't seen Aatrox AD carry before, but I'm just going to call it now. It has to be coined that as we still wait for Yike to move in with this big wave.
And also, you know, the only reason they have a gold lead here is because of the bad level 1. And G2 does do a good job of, like, wrestling back into this game and winning it. But this really did neutralize G2's early game strategy. I mean, credit to BDS. Like, if the question is, was BDS's play at level 1 good? The answer is yes. It's quite good. I just don't know how they could have known. And if they didn't know, I don't know why they took such a huge gamble. So that's where we're at, guys. Those are my thoughts. Again, I want to reiterate, I do not have any evidence. I only have 15 years of watching this game played professionally, deep knowledge of the lane swap meta, understanding of how this has been used recently to fuel my suspicions. So, there are also, you know, I also made this point, but if this had been a game in the regular season, in the round robin, where the draft was pre-recorded and you had 20 minutes to talk about it, I would find this much less suspicious. But because this is like the draft goes directly into the game and the coaches don't have a long time to talk about this, because I'm sure the coaches know about this, guys. I think BDS's coaches are very good. I think BDS is a very coordinated team. I actually think BDS is a pretty good team. So it's not shade at BDS, although they were hilariously bad in these games because, again, you know, I don't fault them. They just haven't played the lane swaps. 15 years so before the game was out? Yes. I was actually playing in closed beta 15 years ago. It came out in 2009. BS the team is better than parts. Yeah. So look, I'm allowed to tweet my suspicions about this. G2 staff, in my opinion, seem to agree with my claims. BDS's did not. But I'm not just going to sit here while Adam and his French horde descend upon my Twitter and not explain in detail why I find this suspicious. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think? Release the voice comms. I mean, Shakarez heard the voice comms and he doesn't suspect anything. So, dumb luck. Possible. I think Scrim was leaked / BDS is actually a bad team. Reasonable. Either they knew or took a huge gamble, had zero info. Yep. Why would they say they saw this leaked in the voice comms? That's what I said. They wouldn't just be like, hey, it's just like the leak. They'd just be like, it's a lane swap. Execute defense pattern delta. Probably leaked a few hours before the game and lots of last minute prep work. That is my guess. But we can't know, and we won't know. I'll just get flamed by French people for my totally reasonable... And you'll notice I'm the only one actually explaining shit here. Yes.
Ah, the French.
Oh, the French. Who of G2 staff said they agreed with you? They didn't say they agreed with me. Let's be clear. They would not say that because it would cause a scandal. They would not say they agreed with me. Here you go, guys. You decide what this means. You decide. Where I say, I like the part where they foiled your first game level 1 by clearly getting scrim leaks. No other ways they would have their bot lane at their red at 130 Lamau. G2 Rodrigo, their analyst. It was just a very good flip by them. You guys decide what that means. Business request, MonteCristo at lastfreenation.com. Given the short amount of time from the FBX NIP game to the BDS G2 games, the lack of time for scrims every week, I cannot see anyone magically preparing for this to be in the exact right place or to suddenly have mastered understanding of it to counter, especially when we have never played against it ever. Oh. Do you think Gen G will have any issues to going to China for MSI? Nah, I don't think it'll be a big deal. I finished Don Quixote many years ago. Labrov is just really smart. Yeah, sure. There's also another possibility, guys, which you may not have considered. Labrov may have, like, it's not, the whole team might not have known. What if Labrov knew that G2, you know, somebody told Labrov didn't tell anybody, and then when they get into game, Labrov knew that they might lane swap, and so he made this call. Doesn't take the whole team knowing, just takes one guy. Nymir, we've already been over the BDS did Cyan lane swaps last year. It was not a lane swap. You're wrong. I went over it. It was a attempted dive that went sideways against Heretics. It does not look anything like this. That is the excuse that you use if you haven't seen it. Respectfully. Have you seen the anime adaptation of the Count of Monte Cristo, Gankutsuo? Yes. So, like, it's possible that Adam believes that he is telling the truth, even though he's doing it in a very shitty way, and that Labrov just made a call, but it's also possible that Labrov is the only person with knowledge of this on the side of BDS. So that's my take, guys. Now, I'm happy to see the lane swap meta come back. How do you prevent scrim leaks? You can't. Am I going to upload this to YouTube? Yes. They're playing 14-8. Void grub buffs could be interesting. The patch notes have not come out yet, guys. There's very little. It's only vague. I'll show you. And talk about it, I guess. I got a little bit of time before I have to go. Just a couple of minutes. So it says, we're buffing Void Grubs this patch by buffing the damage and the number of grubs required to get the first grub summon spawn. So I guess when they say they buff the damage, they mean, and the number of grubs required to get the first grub. By buffing the number of grubs required to get the first grub summon spawn, I think they mean they're lowering it to 4. I think when they say by buffing the number of grubs required, they mean it's a very confusing way to say that they're lowering it to 4 grubs or maybe 3 grubs to get the first grub summon spawn. Also separating the spawn time from dragon a bit to make trading less of a reality, and to have teams engage. Oh, we can't show that. So that's just over there. Current grubs, I mean, if you watch not G2, T1 or Gen G play with 6 grubs, it could be pretty terrifying. Oh, there are grub changes on PvE. Just write it down. Baron attacks, all right, whatever. Skarner, whatever. The ult not QSSable is very interesting. Azir nerfs. True damage per stack increased from 6-3 to 8-4. Number of stacks to summon 1 grub reduced from 5 to 4. Okay, that's what I thought. 2 unchanged at 6. That makes sense. The objective timer changes are big. Yeah, when does it spawn? Does it spawn later or earlier? It might spawn at 4 minutes now. It should spawn earlier, I would think. And then we have buffs for Akali. Very interesting. Draven, Galio, Graves, Gwen, J4, Jin, Kai'Sa, LeBlanc, Olaf. Ryze is very interesting. Sylas is very interesting. Akali, Sylas, Ryze, Olaf, Thresh, Yone are potentially very fun. There's a lot of pro champs here that could get buffs. Staggered spawn, not all. It's 1 at a time. Okay. Yeah, Akali buffs are a little weird, but we don't know how it's getting buffed. Then Azir nerfs Zac and Zeri. Good that Azir and Zeri are getting nerfed. And then Skarner and Mordekaiser. I mean, Mordekaiser's being adjusted, but not having his ult QSSable is huge. It's huge. Zeka buffs, big time. All right, guys. Today is my son's 4th birthday. So I'm going to call it here. I am going to go pick him up from the bus. And we'll be back to stream some more tomorrow. Sorry we didn't get to the rest of Top JDG. I was really enjoying that, but we had to do some other stuff today. And then I'll be back with SI tonight. And we'll just we'll crank out more streams for the week. So thank you for watching. I will see you guys later.